Hey writers, Miss Regacious here. Today we're going to be talking about fiction setting. Okay, so identifying the setting. So the setting is where and when a story takes place. Knowing the setting of a story can help readers understand the characters and events, explaining many of their actions and thoughts. Today, we'll practice identifying setting in a piece of historical fiction, The Red-Tailed Angels, which we've been reading all week. Let's look at this anchor chart before we start reading. So, our anchor chart's title is Identifying the Setting, and we're going to learn how to identify the setting in a story. So, first, we're going to look for time or date words. In the morning, in the year 2056, that would tell us the time or date that the story is taking place. Look for details in the text. A house on the hill in the darkest reaches of the ocean. So that tells us that the house is located on a hill. It's not just a normal house, and it's in the darkest reaches of the ocean, which means they're pretty far into the ocean. We're also going to take a look at pictures. So details and illustrations and photographs. If your book has pictures, it can usually give you hints at where the setting is and what it looks like. Make inferences. So what do you already know about the year or the location? So if I have a story set in the 1920s, I know they're not going to have computers and cell phones like we do now. And if it's set in 2056, I don't really know what it's going to be looking like then, but I can guess that maybe there'll be robots or flying cars or something cool like that. So we're also going to think about how does setting influence the story. Okay, so when I say influence, I mean how does the setting change the story or make the story better or give us an enhanced meaning about the story we're reading. So I'm going to ask myself a few questions. Setting helps readers visualize the story. So when I read the story, can I see what's happening in my imagination, okay? So the setting is going to help us put the character in a place and maybe a time or a certain date of the story. Story clues show changes in settings. So maybe my setting changes throughout the story. There's going to be clues. So what can I look for in the story to tell me the setting has changed? Maybe they say a date in the story. Maybe there's a picture in the story that's different. So maybe they travel from the house on the hill to the darkest reaches of the ocean. So it gives me clues about changing the setting of the story from time and places through the book. Setting indicates how a character might act or what they might say. So a setting might, like if it's a school setting, a child might be acting naughty or they might be acting good. Okay, maybe the setting changes from a house on the hill, so maybe they're scared, to the darkest oceans. Okay, so maybe they're afraid in the ocean. Maybe they're relaxed in the house on the hill, but then they're scared in the ocean. So it can shift how we think the character is feeling or acting in the story. And a setting affects the overall mood of the story, okay? So if I'm in a setting where maybe they're in the spooky woods, I'm going to have a story that has a spooky feeling to it. If my setting is in the Bahamas on a nice beach and I'm getting some yummy coconut water from a coconut, the story's mood is probably going to be relaxed. And if I'm in a story where I may be in the darkest reaches of the ocean, I might be feeling scared or maybe even adventurous. Maybe I'm looking for buried treasure. So the setting is important to our stories, and we've been reading the Red-tailed Angels. So we are actually going to look at a passage from the book, and we can look for details in the story to figure out the setting. So the time might be the year or the time of day, and the place might be a country or even just a room. So in this story, the time and place give important context to understand what is happening in the Red-tailed Angels. I'm going to read on page 2, and you can feel free to pause the video and read along if you like, or just listen. So it says Chapter 1, Tuskegee Army Airfield, Tuskegee, Alabama, April 1943. So we see the setting is in Alabama and Tuskegee, and it's in 1943, so times are a little bit different than they are in 2020. At 2 o'clock in the morning, the only sound coming from the barracks was the slow, measured breathing of men deep in sleep. Only one was awake. Charlie held a flashlight over the book on his lap, but his gaze was set on the photograph tucked into the crease between the pages. From the picture, a handsome man in suit and tie stared back at him, a mischievous look in his eyes. This was his pop. Now gray and retired, his father had sent him off to Tuskegee 2 years ago with a stern direction. Now you show those men what it means to be a fighter. This is no small thing. The Army finally having us fly planes. Do me proud, but most of all, you come back alive. You understand? So we can see that the setting of this also is in the barracks, and he is in the Army about to fly a plane. And back in 1943, we learn later on in the book that they are the first African-American fighter pilots. So that tells us a lot about the setting in just that one page. The text states that the setting is Tuskegee Army Airfield in Tuskegee, Alabama, April 1943, so I can use the text and my background knowledge to figure out that this is a military base in the United States during World War II. The soldiers in the illustration are likely preparing to fight the Germans. So we can even use the picture on page 2. They're sleeping in the barracks, but you see Charlie with his flashlight on, so we get a sense of where they're sleeping. This tells me that the characters know they have important and a dangerous job. They might take them to dangerous places around the world. The change in setting from one part of the story to another will affect the characters and the plot. So as we read on in this book, the setting changes to them going to Africa and fighting in the war. I'm not going to give away the rest of the book if you haven't read it, but I want you to go into your assignment for today, and I want you to pick a different setting from a page in the book and tell us a little bit about the setting and what page you are referring to. Maybe give us a time and date words, look for details in the text, look at the picture, and make inferences. Okay, so use this chart to make your setting identification and submit it to your teacher. I hope you guys have a good rest of your day, and I will talk to you next time.